The Mafia is a human affair, and like all human affairs, it has a beginning, and it will also have an end. These are the famous words of Giovanni Falcone, the magistrate who contributed more than anyone else in Italy to the fight against the Mafia, eventually becoming a symbol of this struggle, before being brutally murdered in a savage attack in May 1992. He was responding to a journalist who asked whether it was possible for the Italian state to definitively defeat the powerful criminal organization born in Sicily and known as Cosa Nostra. Falcone, originally from Palermo, believed that the Mafia phenomenon was not something natural, but a historical phenomenon, derived from specific causes and with precise consequences. However, for a long time, the history and the very existence of Cosa Nostra were downplayed, if not outright denied. It was only in relatively recent times, between the 1980s and 1990s, that the state and public opinion became fully aware of the Mafia phenomenon and adopted adequate counter-strategies. Today, it can be said that, due to its implications, the history of Cosa Nostra is an integral part of contemporary Italian history because of the way its evolution has followed the more general development of the country. From the history of the Sicilian Mafia, its most distinctive characteristic also clearly emerges: its constitutive connection with parts of power and politics. This connection represents still today the most controversial and obscure aspect of its criminal activity, and one of the main reasons for its development and affirmation over time. The origins of Cosa Nostra are rooted in the agricultural realities of Sicily in the 19th century. Despite the known existence of the phenomenon, the Italian state initially struggled to counteract it. However, things seemed to change with the advent of fascism. In 1924, Mussolini sent Cesare Mori, nicknamed the Iron Prefect, to Sicily, with the special task of eradicating Cosa Nostra from the island's territory. Mori's harsh methods, which were not very popular with the Sicilian population, initially achieved some results. Over time, however, the effectiveness of these countermeasures weakened, while the fascist regime itself was increasingly infiltrated by individuals connected to or affiliated with the Mafia system. In 1943, Anglo-American troops landed in Sicily, and fascism collapsed. Cosa Nostra skillfully exploited the opportunity and chaos of the invasion to regain its power. They managed to have many of their men appointed within the new municipal administrations that were established in place of the fascist ones. With the beginning of the 1950s and the economic boom, partly due to agrarian reform, Mafia activity began to shift from the countryside to the cities. The large public contracts for building construction and infrastructure represented an excellent business opportunity for Cosa Nostra, which could rely on new relationships with local and national politics. The city of Palermo became the symbol of the building speculation conducted by the Mafia in Sicily and beyond. Indeed, between the 1950s and 1960s, entire historic areas of the Sicilian capital were demolished to make way for rampant urban development. This speculation became known by the term Sacco di Palermo, the sack of Palermo. During this period, Mafia activities began to transcend their traditional regional dimension in Sicily and projected towards the rest of the national territory and abroad. In addition to construction, Cosa Nostra increasingly engaged in international drug trafficking, a gigantic business that generated enormous amounts of money and established ties with organized crime groups around the world. The illicit proceeds from these activities were laundered through relationships with significant sectors of the economy and finance. Over time, Cosa Nostra gained a majority share in the global drug trade, which became the Mafia's primary activity between the 1970s and 1980s, definitively changing the profile of the organization. This shift marked a significant transformation in the scale and nature of their criminal operations, positioning them as key players in international organized crime. While Cosa Nostra proved capable of evolving and adapting to the times, what remained unchanged were the violent and ruthless methods with which the organization asserted its criminal dominance. Intimidation and murder were employed both against external enemies, who hindered their activities, and within the organization itself, where conflicts among different families vying for control were not uncommon. In the early 1960s, a first war between rival clans began, drawing attention for its brutality, the number of victims, and the trail of retribution it left behind. During this phase, the response of the state to these developments in mafia activity was not always adequate. In 1963, the first Parliamentary Anti-Mafia Commission was established, tasked with collecting data and information and suggesting strategies to counteract the mafia phenomenon. However, its activity, at least initially, was rather limited. This period marked a growing awareness at the governmental level of the mafia issue, but effective measures and strategies to combat it were still in their nascent stages. At the beginning of the 1980s, as Cosa Nostra was evolving into a veritable multinational crime organization, an internal power struggle erupted. The emerging faction was the Corleonese clan, which, after a bloody conflict, succeeded in gaining control of the criminal organization. This period marked a significant shift in the power dynamics within Cosa Nostra, with the Corleonese, led by figures like Toto Riina, becoming notorious for their particularly ruthless approach and for escalating the level of violence in mafia conflicts. The military strategy of the Corleonesi was clear and aimed at the physical elimination of their enemies, both internal and external. As a result, between 1979 and 1982, Cosa Nostra committed a series of high-profile murders. Victims included Pio La Torre, a member of the Italian Parliament, Piersanti Mattarella, the president of the Sicilian region, and General Carlo Alberto Dalla Chiesa. These individuals had in various ways been actively involved in efforts to combat mafia activities. These assassinations marked a significant escalation in the mafia's willingness to directly confront and eliminate those in positions of power who opposed them. The work of the Palermo magistrates, aided by the confessions of informants like Buscetta, led to the establishment of the Maxi trial in Palermo. In 1986, over 470 mafia members were brought to trial, accused of numerous crimes committed by Cosa Nostra. This massive trial, closely followed by the media and public opinion, concluded after several years with a series of severe sentences, including 19 life sentences, handed down to many of the organization's top figures. These tragic events marked a dark period in Italy's history, highlighting the mafia's willingness to target the state's representatives directly. The murders of Falcone and Borsellino, both highly respected for their commitment to fighting organized crime, provoked widespread outrage and mourning, significantly impacting Italian society and politics. These events also led to increased national and international resolve to combat the mafia more effectively. The attacks during this period continue to be a subject of current news and judicial investigations, particularly concerning a purported, and if confirmed, disturbing, secret negotiation between Cosa Nostra and the state. This alleged negotiation is said to have taken place concurrently with the massacres, with the aim of ending the conflict between the two entities, despite the arrests of two historic bosses linked to the Corleonesi clan, Toto Riina and Bernardo Provenzano, and the abandonment of the massacre strategy adopted in the early 1990s. Cosa Nostra remains a live and active criminal organization in Italy and abroad. It continues to weave relationships with politics and the economy and to influence Sicilian and Italian society. In this channel, we will explore the stories of the Mafia, the lives and actions of criminals like Riina and Provenzano, both powerful bosses and other types of mafia born in Italy and then expanded into the world, making the Italian Mafia, Camorra, and 'Ndrangheta the most powerful criminal organizations in the world. To not miss any of our content, please consider subscribing. Thanks for watching.